okay, they suspect about these amount of um, gunmen. I mean, it was a locality. Somebody should have seen them. Somebody should, you know, seen something, or somebody should have said something. I wonder what the investigation is, except maybe that is confidential.
Now, I know different parts of the country have different population levels, different accessibility to for security officials as well. But this one that happened in Oyo State, I'm putting it, juxtaposing it with the what happened in where was it? We took a story yesterday. I think it was Southern Kaduna, where for over 6 hours, these terrorists actually went and were attacking citizens in a community in southern Kaduna, and 6 hours, no security officials. So, as you're saying this, that's just bringing that to mind, and other security incidents that we've seen of this nature where we don't see security officials, but then we come, afterwards and here we're going to fish them out. Now, Tunde, I'd love to get your take on this as well. It's such a, it needs everybody's take.
Yeah, yeah, sure. For me, there's a couple of questions, right?
Okay.
So to me, there's quite a bit that doesn't add. And I don't want to talk at detective, right? Um, they need to give us a bit more information, or it would be useful and not nice, more than nice actually, to get a bit more information as to how they arrived at their conclusion, right? One, there's been no there's paucity of information as to what was it, the ammunition that was used that has been traced back to these guys. What precisely have they linked this? Because one, like you rightly said, until very recently it was unknown gunmen, and that's clearly because of all the gaps that we have in our security and intelligence network and infrastructure. Suddenly they have corporates, and it's not like ISWAP has
Claimed
claim
responsibility.
responsibility, right? So that usually, there's a reason why there is a whole thing about terrorist groups claiming responsibility for an attack, right? They've not claimed responsibility. It would be nice to know how they've made this claim, and you know why it's significant, and because if it is indeed an Islamist separatist group or an Islamist group, um, it will be the first attack, to the best of my knowledge, in the south,
Southern Nigeria.
right? That is significant, right? That is an indication of a change in their maybe in strategy, in their tactical scope. Not that they couldn't have carried out attacks in the south before, but it's a marked and significant change in, should I say, in gears or direction. It'd be useful to know that our intelligence agencies actually even have a grasp of things, and haven't just labeled it as this is
Well,
ISWAP or
to me,
this
it's
is
quite interesting
whatever it
because
is.
for years we've heard information, filtering out and leaking out about how they are actually already in the southern part of the country and
No,
making their.
having operatives in the south is different from carrying out attacks in the south. I
Mm,
mean, it is one
okay.
country and there's no restriction to movement, but there's a reason why attacks were concentrated in certain parts of the country, right? It's not because there's a paucity of or there's a lot less security. It's not like we have a lot more security operatives in southern parts of the country. There's a reason. So this is significant, So that's why I'm a bit more. I would like to see more, and it would give us comfort that that they're a bit more ahead of what's going on.
Okay, now I want to bring this the conversation over to Lagos because there's this story in from the Punch newspaper. Lagos mob burns 30 Okadas, beats motorcyclist for killing pedestrian. Now this happened yesterday on Jakonde Estate, Sherry Road in Lagos, after an Okada rider crushed a man to death. And so three mob youths who were apparently angered by then protested against the victim's death,
Mm.
and the Okada rider was going one way. First of all, rammed into the
Mm-hmm.
victim who was standing by a bus stop, and then people got angry, started coming after the Okada rider, and it would have degenerated into a mob
Mm-hmm.
jungle justice killing. But then we actually had policemen rescue him, uh, to which then the people burnt all these
Mm-hmm.
Okadas. So incident that we've been seeing with what is starting to become a startling frequency now. Your
Mm.
take?
A couple of things here. One, the statewide ban on Okadas and how difficult it is to enforce. Um, not just this ban, but laws generally. It's a reflection on that. How many times the government has tried to ban. But you go to once you out of the central business, district in our state, it's an entirely different matter. So there's that. Then secondly, this is just a reflection. There's always anger brimming under the surface, right? I was reading some quote that was making its round on Nigerian social media yesterday, saying the Nigerians are always angry. You will be angered every single day, right? You just don't know. If you wake up and you're not angry, you just don't know what will upset you. Um, so when you have that sort of tinderbox situation, anything can spark you off, right? And especially when someone loses their lives in such an unnecessary manner, right? But jungle justice is never really the answer. But when people very often feel that in any society, not unique to us, when they feel that they're not that they're only recourse to that they themselves are the only recourse to any kind of justice, this happens, right? Um, I mean, really, what do we say? Where do we go from here? This is neither new. It's I don't see any end. It's jungle justice all across this, all across the city. There was unrest, relating to Okada riders in more than one incident this
Not to
week.
mention
You know,
also the
there was
face
the
off
Yaraba
between
one.
the yes,
Yeah,
exactly.
there was, so look,
No, there's not. Well, to be honest, let's leave it to you. So make sure you send your messages into 0809 440 981 and leave your comments up on the YouTube stream, youtube.com/smooth 981 FM, and of course Twitter, where we are at smooth 981 FM. Just tag us in that in your tweets. Now, going on to this story from the Premium Times, Nigeria seals 25,000 illegal in 8 years. This is according to the outgoing registrar of the Pharmacists Council of Mohammed, who made this known at the public presentation of his scoreboard in Abuja on Tuesday. Now, first of all, this happening over the course of 8 years, 25,000 illegal pharmacies. What would you make of this number, Fidel?
First of all, can I just say I like his name, Elijah Muhammad. Anyways, so 25,000 illegal pharmacies have been sealed in the past 8 years. I mean, I'd expect to hear him to get more numbers than 25,000, right? I feel like uh, there's a lot more scrutiny that should go into pharmaceutical products that people are going to consume, and with the way we have it, just from like the common knowledge we have, I think the numbers should be higher than that. But I mean, this is a man's scorecard, and let's assume he has tried, and let's see what next they're doing. Pharmaceutical science faculties in the country, and well done. And they're trying to like focus the scope and moving the practice from, would I say, a a product perspective to a patient perspective. That's good. But what I want to hear from the Pharmaceutical Council is how well they're cracking down on the sale of. I mean, it's more like a NAFTA thing, but I want to see them, synergize with agencies like the NAFTA and crack down on the sale of drugs that are not supposed to be sold by some certain kind of people. For example, if we go down the road, we see these guys who are hawking pharmaceutical products. Right? They have no knowledge of what they're selling. They don't know how to administer it, but people are buying from them. So, I mean, I know there's a concern as to pricing, right? Pricing and affordability.
Yeah, not just that though, but we also looking at the brain drain, right? Because we've had medical personnel going overseas, but there's also been actually a dearth in pharmaceutical practitioners, which then leaves lacuna for those who are not certified or who are not qualified to actually step in. Now, what can we do about that?
Now, to be honest with you, Shokbe, I don't know how much the Pharmaceutical Council can do. Now, there are more or less like regulators and do the education and the training. Now, everything that happens, so after the education, training, and handling the regulatory practice, the Pharmaceutical Council cannot I don't think they have the powers to ensure that their members or prospective members stay in the country. That's a government thing, right? So if the economics aren't good,
Samuel from Lucky says, very funny to ask how the government arrived at ISWAP as the perpetrators of the Orwell crimes. It's the safest thing to say, considering that those present said they were herders. This is why I won't believe the government when they say crimes in the southeast are committed by IPOB, north is bandit slash ISWAP, and south is militants, all without investigations. They even said investigations are still ongoing, yet they've arrived at a conclusion. Please, government, show all working. Don't just write the answer. This message in James Ogbonna from Oshodi says, if indeed the attack in Ondo was carried out by ISWAP terrorists, then we are in big trouble because Lagos is just around the corner and sometimes it's not difficult for them to infiltrate any part of the country because anybody can just stroll in unchecked. See how they move in droves on bikes without any obstruction, but again, how did national security know it was ISWAP terrorists? Well, questions. Okay, so moving on now. From the National Assembly, we've got this one in from the Punch to ASU. From one protest to another. ASU, SANU, and others knock Obaseki for suspending academic unions. Now, the Joint Action Committee of the Senior Staff Association of Nigeria Universities and Non Academic Staff Union of Educational and Associated Institutions and the Academic Staff Union of Universities and Academic Staff Union of Polytechnics, all of them. Yeah, big mouthful. They've described the suspension of all union activities in the state in state institutions of higher learning by Edo State government as a lawless and undemocratic act. Fidel, would you agree with them?
I mean, look, it's very common to see our leaders, you know, assume that role of an emperor. Okay, we've seen it in the federal government, we've seen it in states, and we've also seen it with aspirants, assuming that they're the next emperor. You know, so all I would say is I want these people, these groups, from ASU to the Senior Staff Association, the Polytechnics Association, the Student Union, because the Student Union is also involved, and as well as even the NAS workers, to remember this when they do go to the polls, because that is when they can, you know, get their rights. So that's when they have the power. I want them to remember these things when they go to the poll. Who actually stood for them? Who actually said that I am going to do this for you, and we genuinely did it for you. So we see that these guys are complaining that the state governor is saying no more activities or banning activities, and they're going to take it to court. But my question is this: fine, maybe these grievances are supposed to be, channeled to the federal government. But the question is, what is, I mean, these people are in your state. What have you done to provide some sort of succor for them, first of all, instead of just, carrying a hammer and say, stop it, nobody should do these activities? I don't know. Maybe eventually, maybe later on, the Edo State government will come and say, this is what they did. But, and especially in Edo State, I just feel like, which is a citadel of learning, like there's a lot of academic institutions in Edo State, tertiary institutions in Edo State. I feel like the state governor should have done more. I'm not taking sides yet. I mean, I'm not taking sides, but I feel like the state government could have done more.
But
My
going
question
back
is,
to just 1 second today, but going back to what they said, right? Lawlessness, and let's talk about the lawfulness of this because we have the right to unionize, and from unions come
Indeed,
union
we do.
activity.
We
indeed,
do
No,
have the
indeed,
right.
so
exactly.
how exactly does
So,
this?
so, like I said, that's why I said assuming the role of an emperor, because we do have the right to associate. We do have the right to peaceful, even peaceful protests, right? And so, if these unions, who are, I mean, duly registered, are expressing their grievances, I mean, it's only right that if they're doing it the right way, the state governor allows them, or the state government allows them to express themselves, right? Especially when it's not really something you can solve, okay? But I mean, let's let's hear what the Edo State government has to say about
It,
this.
it's been said that impunity is our biggest problem. It's impunity that feeds all our other ills. It's what feeds clearly lawlessness, what feeds corruption, and it's the ability to just do things against the list is clearly against the law in and of itself, and this is coming from the state government. My only one question I have is to what end was he? I really didn't get. I still don't get that part. why has he suspended them? To achieve what? What's the objective? Is it suddenly to get the kids back in school? Is it to improve the? I mean, even if you want to act with impunity and heavy-handedness, there's always an excuse. There is a reason or an excuse to it. I don't see it here, so that makes it even more baffling.
That's just like
Well,
a
I
hammer
suppose the
approach.
ostensible excuse would, or the ostensible rationale behind it would be that they need to get students back into
Okay,
these
so you suspend the guys. So
institutions.
you suspend the guys who are doing the job now. What will you do? You import replacements from what, Delta State?
Your messages now. Jibril says ASU has a misunderstanding with the federal government while shutting down a state university. Okay. And Ike Peter says, I commend the Edo State government. A number state university took a similar step in 2020, and now students have been going to school. He actually says before this, a couple of messages before this, ASU got money from the federal government last year. Senior lecturers in a certain federal university in Ebonyi shared without a penny to the younger lecturers. I have a cousin there. That's why he knows. And ASU's agreement is between federal universities and ASU states are joining in solidarity. Well, the Edo State faction says that they can't just stop because this is from the national party. So there you go, from the national bloc. And yeah, so thank you for sending that message in, EKP. So keep on sending your messages in. People will keep reading. Okay, so let's take a look at this next story. Why Nigeria's gas to power challenges may worsen. Now, all of this apparently is going the issues that we've got with our perennial gas to power challenges are looks like it might be getting worse because of the Caritas University gas leak. Now, this is in Enugu State, and it began on the 25th of May, and as of press time, it was still going.
Hmm.
Okay, so the article goes on to say that that there was a gas leak which caused a fire outbreak close to the university that started off when the community was trying for the first time to dig a borehole. So they drilled deeper into the ground about 290 meters out of their targeted 350 meters, and then they hit a gas pipeline which eventually caused a fire which kept on burning.
Mm.
Yes, Tunde, your thoughts?
Yeah, well, a number of things here. The first one, the biggest one that's sticking out is that since this has happened, we've generated less than 2,000 megawatts. Apparently, I don't know how much of a link it has. I know because gas is not our only, you know, means of power generation, but clearly it's had some sort of impact. This is again Nigerian story, right? We have no idea in many instances, and there's no very poor record keeping of what's beneath the ground that we stand on. We all recall that the Lagos Ibadan Expressway, construction hit a lot of delays and roadblocks as well because there are concerns around major power lines that were below the ground as well. The airport projects in both Lagos and Abuja, I think, also had the same thing. So we create things, we create infrastructure, we put it in the ground, we cover it up, and we just forget about it. Apparently, right? Um, if we documented these things properly, it should make it easier, right? For things like this not to occur and not to happen. It speaks also to planning, right? So there's nothing wrong with a gas pipeline being underneath the ground, but obviously there was no planning for this community to have water, right? So where did they get water today?
Right.
How did they arrive at a place where they suddenly need to drill a borehole and potentially hit a gas line? And we all know that gas lines can be notoriously, even in the most organized and responsive of countries, can be difficult to bring under control.
Well, actually, speaking about that, the president of the Nigerian Association of Petroleum Explorationists, Dr. James Edet, said that yes, as the flare has been going on for over a week now, and they're thinking it could go on for about a month before things
Yeah,
can
gas
go
flares and
back.
burnouts can be quite, but once again, no expert here, but are there points at which they can turn this off? Maybe it wasn't designed. I don't know how old the gas pipeline is, but more modern ones, perhaps there is some switch valve where you can either divert the gas to take an alternate section, or you can isolate, bottom line, isolate that section without affecting the entire thing. That doesn't seem to be the case, so I mean, clearly that's why we're battling with it for this amount of time.
All right, Guardian News now. INEC says Tinubu, Atiku, and others must submit names of running mates by June 17th. The commission saying that the names of presidential candidates must be accompanied by names of their running mates, or they will be considered invalid. Fidel. So the watch starts again for who their running mates will be. No thoughts.
I mean, yeah, it'll be interesting to see how each political party could or would, come about it. INEC has given 17th of June for all political parties to bring out the the candidates. So we have the aspirants for the president, we have his vice, we have senatorial aspirants, as well as aspirants for the House of Rep. Each party must bring out their candidates by the 17th of June at the national level, and then for the state level, we have the 15th of July. Okay, for governorship candidates and the various houses in each state. So for me, I think what I like about the story is that INEC is trying to sensitize parties to ensure that these candidates are uploaded on their portal. I mean, thank God the agency is using technology. But what is more important is to see how, I mean, we've seen how the, in quote, delegates have, I mean, I think they've been the most popular group in all of this. So we've seen how delegates have picked, who would represent which party. It's interesting to see how the aspirants will pick their running mates, and it's for Nigerians to continue to see how the kind of people that are coming forth to rule us and see their track record, as well as see to some certain level their intelligence and integrity, you know.
All right. Well, thank you, Fidel, and thank you, Tunde. We've come to the end of the show, but I do want to read out some messages before we get going. Now, Austin from Mao Estate says, the Edo governor is behaving like an emperor. Let the unions go to court. Whilst Ken says the government are now broadcasters. Shapa, I hope they don't take your job. So if it's ISOP, then what? And Dakbo says during the June 12th time of MKO and the Muslim ticket, the friction between Christians and Muslims was not as escalated as it is today. And plenty of people had never even heard of Islamic Jihad, so it would be futile comparing that period with now. Whilst Edward Ibao says, for this discussion, gas pipelines are well documented and boreholes drilling to that depth should be given to men of expertise who liaise with the appropriate authorities. And I'll take this final message from Twitter, from Okonko Samuel, who says 25,000 illegal pharmacies sealed. Well, they'll just change locations. Let them do what they did with drugs. Let them frame their licenses and hang them on their walls. That way I can scan or check them against a database to know if they're approved. And that's that. Do make sure you find my analysts up on the social media platforms, Instagram, Twitter, wherever. Find them. Tunde Okufi is at Big Koofs, and Fidel is at Izotene. Find both of them. And of course, we are at Smooth 981 FM. Coming up, it is going to be sports inside the locker room, and that's at 8:15.
That last comment, they just changed.